you so much for joining me, Sukanya, today. I'm absolutely delighted to have you. Can you tell me a little bit about you and your role at Brandsmiths?
Sure. So I'm an IP litigator, which means that I work with clients who are in disputes about their intellectual property, which covers a whole host of different things, trademarks, design, copyright, things like that, which we can get into separately. But yeah, my role here is an associate, so I work in a team, helping clients essentially protect their business through intellectual property.
Amazing, thank you. And did you always know that you wanted to become a lawyer? Like how the people in your family that are lawyers? How did you get?
How did I get
Yeah,
here?
how did you get here?
It was very kind of procedural and a bit boring. I kind of did a mix of A levels and I thought, what can I do with this? And it turns out to study law at uni, it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
So that kind of made me do law at uni. And then I studied IP as one of my modules and I just thought it was super interesting.
Okay.
I had a great tutor for it and yeah, I just think it's because you're working in the creative industries, you're working with people who create things, you're talking about how, like, the scope of what you own, how much of it is the brand, how much of it is the brand communicating with consumers. It's quite an interesting way to look at businesses, and I just thought it was super interesting. And that's how I ended up doing IP.
And here you are.
And here I am.
And in when you're talking about kind of that scope and all the different companies that you're working with, for anyone who might be watching this, who's got their own company or thinking about starting a brand, can you tell us kind of why the intellectual property element's so important, and what would be the first steps you would take if you were starting a business?
Very good question. I think the advantage of being at the start is that you get to do things right from the start. Sometimes we have clients come to us and they're like, we've been doing this for 10 years and we still haven't worked out what our IP is. So I think the first thing is to work out, the company name. It's a really good idea to speak to a trademark attorney to help you fine tune what that name is. Sometimes clients come in and they say, this is the name I want. And then you look at the trademark register and a company already exists with that name that does the same kind of thing. And that's when you landed up in trouble.
Yeah.
So the first thing to do is really think about the branding that you want. The name is so important. Logos, everything about the brand. Um, it's helpful to speak to an attorney to help fine tune that. And then the next thing to do is really get your rights registered, which sounds incredibly boring and like a lot of admin, but this is where IP lawyers come in. Um, the registration angle is super important. It gives your brand a lot of value. When you're looking to buy a company, you look at what trademarks they have, you look at their IP portfolio. So there's a lot of value in it. It means enforcing your rights are a lot easier. So what that basically means is if there's a competitor who's treading on your toes, you can stop them a lot easier if you've got those registrations in place.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to prove your rights. And it stops copycats. So the last thing you want is to build reputation in the market and then someone starts copying you and you can't stop them.
Yeah.
So speaking about registration sounds quite dull, but actually it's a really good and important first step for any
And
business.
ultimately, when you're a founder, it's your baby and you're starting it and you want to protect and make sure that you're getting off on the
Exactly.
right foot and you're not coming into problems down the line.
Exactly.
And from on this journey that you've been on, what are the kind of biggest things that you've seen that can go wrong when people don't have what's required in place?
I think so because I'm a litigator and I work in disputes quite a lot, we often see things after it's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And one of the main challenges is really getting the evidence in place. So if you say, I've been trading since 2020, but your registration was only in 2024, and then you have to prove that you were actually doing the trade from 2020 and you might not have all the documents in place, you're having to find invoices from 5 6 years ago, um, fine for some bigger companies that have big IP teams, but if you're just working from your living room, you're a sole trader, you're a family business, you do a lot of things over the phone, that record keeping is so helpful, so important, and we often see that it can make or break a case sometimes. So getting sure all the documents and evidence is there in the event of a dispute
It's really
is really
important.
important.
Really important. And What's your ideal client look like? What's your kind of USP of where you think Brandsmith would fit with a with helping a business?
I think, I mean, one of the reasons this is such a lawyer answer, I'm so sorry. But one of the reasons I really like Brandsmiths and IP in general is because it transcends different industries. So we've got people who, in fashion and consumer goods, like tech. It really does span everything because
Yeah.
everything is a brand. We've got individuals who, like celebrities, are brands in themselves. So the industry is very varied. In terms of the ideal client, again, like we work with some tiny, tiny startup companies or sole traders, but then also companies that have huge teams across different countries.
Yeah.
So um, I would say there is no ideal client. Sorry, that's a really annoying
No,
answer.
great answer.
It's
But it shows how, yeah, important it is that it literally covers anyone who's thinking about creating something, as you say. Um, okay, some slightly kind of left field questions now for you. But we've been asking everyone today, you're working with so many companies and brands and founders and individuals. What's a common trait that they have that you think makes their businesses so successful?
I guess because it's a creative thing a lot of the time, you've come up with a name, a logo, a way of standing out in the market. A lot of them are really in love with their brand. And I think that the desire to fight when there's a dispute is a common thread. And I think that it's something that sometimes, can be challenging because sometimes you have to tell the client, like, okay, like, I know you want to do this, but have you thought about mediating and trying to settle because it might have a more commercially beneficial option? Um, but the common thread is very much, these are people who have created something and they're very proud of it.
Yeah.
And they kind of feel wronged if there's a copycat. They feel wronged if there's an infringement.
Yeah.
It's quite a personal thing sometimes because of the nature of it. So yeah, I guess the passion from the creators is the common theme, and it's what makes it really interesting.
And if there was one app or brand in that you use in your day to day that you couldn't live without, what would it be?
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp. Yeah,
Has everyone said that?
we're throwing out different
Okay.
questions. So WhatsApp, good answer. Um, if you could swap jobs with somebody for 1 week, who would it be? What industry would it be in?
Oh, I apart from being a lawyer, I've always also wanted to be a teacher, so I would happily be like a primary school teacher for a week.
Amazing. And was that what you wanted to go into? And if it wasn't law, it would have been teaching.
I think so. My mum's a teacher, and I think that made me not want to do it as well as want to do it because they work so hard.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I don't want this lifestyle, but I like the job a lot. So, yeah, I think teaching.
Brilliant. Perfect.